Hello and welcome back to geometry. We're going to get started with our next lesson, which is lesson 408, Triangle Congruence, which is angle, angle, side, and hypotenuse, leg, part 2. Please don't forget to give me your course and section number with all communication. Help me help you faster. What we're going to be going over today is you will be exploring angle side combinations that do not prove congruence, and you will identify congruent polygons and corresponding parts of congruent polygons. You will use postulates and theorems to prove triangles congruent, and you will identify and use properties of isosceles triangles. First off, you cannot prove triangle congruence using only the angles of a triangle. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the slider that's on page 4 of your LMS so we can see why this is so. I believe you should be able to see my screen. Let me make it a little smaller just in case. There we go. And watch what happens. Right now you have all these congruent angles and the sides are congruent, but as you move the slider, look how the sides are growing in value. They're getting longer and longer and longer, but the angles are still the same degree measure. So that slider is a real good example of why it doesn't work. So let me move this back. Let's see what's next here. Oh, there it is. It is possible to create non-congruent triangles that have 3 congruent corresponding angles because both the shape and the size of the triangles must be the same for triangles to be congruent. Having only congruent angles does not actually prove congruence. And we just showed that with the slider. Okay, where is my little arrows? Okay, now then, side-side angle. Well, there is a good reason why we don't use this one, if you can read backwards, but let me show you the real geometric reason. I'm going to bring another slider over, and here we see the side-side angle correspondence, and if you look, we've got this triangle up here, and you see its side measures and its angle measures. Now watch this. Here's another triangle that's congruent. Okay, we like that one. It's real congruent. Watch what happens. I'm going to keep sliding. They're making that side longer. Now look at this. Okay, we have an angle that stayed congruent, a corresponding angle, and we had 2 sides that stayed corresponding. But if you look, this corresponding angle up here changed. It went from 120 to 60, and this side over here went from 2.18 to 5.14. So that right there shows you that those 2 angles aren't congruent based on side-side angle correspondence. All right. So let me see what this next slide's going to say. It says if you move the slider all the way to the right, you'll find the triangle that is a counterexample that shows that side-side angle isn't going to work. And the 2 triangles are not congruent because the measures of the remaining sides and angles are different. See, we went from this 120 to the 60 right here. And see, this is where the original triangle was, and when they lengthened that one side, it made it look like a totally different triangle. So we know they're not congruent. So let's get into working some examples. And this is just showing us, or actually we're going to be learning how to use some of the different theorems and postulates that we've learned to help prove triangle congruence. Now this says state whether 2 triangles with the given dimensions are congruent, and if they are, support your answer with a postulate or theorem, and if they aren't, give a counterexample. Alright, since I'm not that great of a drawer of straight lines, I thought, well, I'm going to go in here and put in a couple of triangles with the PowerPoint software, and then I'm just going to label them. Okay, remember, the corresponding letters have to correspond. So A corresponds with R on your triangle, that is. And then I've got B, which corresponds with S, and then I have C, which corresponds with T. They tell me that the measure of A, angle A, equals the measure of R, and they both equal 56 degrees. So I'm going to put that in here. And then they said the measure of angle B equals the measure of angle S, and those are both 46 degrees. And then they said the measure of angle C and the measure of angle T are both 78 degrees. Now, it didn't tell you to draw these, but I do, because for me, visually, it helps to see what's going on. And it said, state whether the two triangles with the given dimensions are congruent. Well, they look congruent, but we can't assume that using the angle, because that's what we just learned in this lesson, is that you can't just depend on the angles because the sides can actually be different. So the answer to this one would be no. And although that the corresponding angles are congruent, the corresponding sides may not be congruent. And so remember that angle does not prove congruence. Okay, let's see what the next problem has for us. Okay, let me get some more triangles up here. Okay, so let's go ahead. We're going to pretend like I drew these and they're perfect. We're going to go ahead and label our vertices, and remember they correspond. So J is with X, K, oops, wrong triangle, Miss Poor. K goes with Y, and look down here, and L goes with Z. Alright, it says the measure of J and X are 83 degrees. LK and ZY are both 14 centimeters. And JK and XY are both 17 centimeters. Alright, so you look at what the information that you've been given, and you look at your triangles, and if you look, you've got a side, and an angle. Side, side, angle. That's what's corresponding. So side, side, angle that we've learned in this lesson does not prove congruence. So the answer here would be a big no, nada. Okay, this one says triangle DEF and STW. So let me go ahead and label my parts. D and S, E, oops, wrong triangle, Miss Poor. Let's put a T there. And then F and W. And it says D and S are both 65 degrees. And E and T are both 64. And F and W are 51. Well, that one's pretty easy because we just did a problem like that. Okay, we cannot go by angle. And you know what? Angle does not prove congruence. There, got that one out really quick. So that one is a no as well. Alright, the instructions are a little bit different on this one. Let's see what it says. It says determine whether it's possible to prove that the triangles are congruent. If it is, support your answer with a theorem or postulate. If not possible, explain your reasoning. Well, we look here and we see that B and C are corresponding and they're congruent. A and D are corresponding and they're congruent. We also know that this angle right here is going to be congruent because they're vertical angles. But we cannot say that the triangles are congruent, so we're going to say no, because the angle does not prove congruence. Okay? These are pretty easy and straightforward. Okay, it states whether two triangles, blah, 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 same story. And we look at this and we see the corresponding angles of C and D are congruent. We've got this angle's right here, those are congruent. And then these angles up here are congruent and they're corresponding. However, we know we can't say they're congruent because of the angle, but if you look right here, we know that AB is congruent to AB because of the reflexive property of congruence. I'll get that written in a minute. Reflexive property of congruence. We also know that AB is a bisector of angle A and it is perpendicular to CD, so that's going to tell us that CB is congruent to BD. So that's a whole lot of information that we got in that one triangle, but that's because of what we've learned with isosceles triangle. So we can say that triangle, let me make sure I'm getting these right, ABC is congruent to triangle ABD by angle, side. Because see, you've got angle, side. Or you could have went from angle, side. It would have worked either way. And we could have also used, if we wanted to, or the angle, side, angle, which you would have went from these top ones to the side to the bottom ones. Would have worked any of those ways. Okay, let's see how this one works out. Oh wow, we've got these corresponding sides. We've got UW is congruent to XZ. We've got VW, Volkswagen, is congruent to YZ. Oh, and then we know that angle UVW is congruent to angle XYZ. So it looks like that this is side angle. Alright, and so that isn't going to work for us. But let's look at something else. Remember another theorem that we learned? It said if we have a hypotenuse that's congruent, right? And we have a leg that's corresponding legs that are congruent on right triangles, remember? Yes. And that's because of the HL theorem. So hey, don't forget about that little guy. He can pull you out of a mess quick. Alright, let's go on here. You learned that neither angle or side angle correspondences guarantee congruence between triangles. Those are a lot of big words. And what you should be doing after you watch this video is please go through and read the LMS 408 Triangle Congruence Part 2 and complete the student guide. Read through the pages in the reference guide and be sure to add to your notes if you need to. And then complete these following problems in your problem set. And after you get finished doing all that, if you do not understand these concepts, you need to contact me or attend TOGA if you have any questions before you try the quiz. And then again, make note of any general questions you may have when you attend CC on Thursday. That's going to be it for Lesson 408. Thanks for listening.